Hi, you're listening to Scribble Talk Teaching, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sudram, and I'll be sitting down with the industry leaders to dive deep into the topics that business winning professionals like you can use to help grow your skills and your business. Today's guest is J. Turner, Laura Jane Turner. Laura has been a featured guest already. So if you haven't listened to our podcast, please do listen in episode number 124, where we documented Laura's early life, career, stories, people in the life, and a lot more about her. So today we are going to talk about lessons learned and lessons shared, but still, let's talk about Laura, or LJ, as we fondly call her. LJ is the Director of Bids and Frameworks for Jigsaw, based in Nottingham. Before she's been she's been in the industry for well over 20 plus years. Award-winning Executive Mentor of the Year by the CRN Women and Channel Awards, Mentor of the Year and East Midlands Business Awards. LJ is actively involved in groups aiming to drive female engagement in STEM, IT and technology, and recently LJ has also been nominated as the Women of the Year 2022 part of the CRN Awards again. So there's a lot more to talk about. LJ, welcome to Scribble Talk Teaching.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here again. I feel very honoured to have been asked back a second time. That's very kind of you.
LJ, it's always a pleasure. Let's go back. I mean, like mentoring, there are a lot of people who mentor people. What is mentoring in general, LJ, from your experience of mentoring people?
When I put it into what I would consider layman's terms, to me, mentoring is just using your experience to help other people take a different perspective on decisions or actions they're going to take. Because you're giving them an opportunity to talk through a course of action, and you're using the experiences you've gained to say, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or let me understand why you think that's the right thing to do. So it's helping people to explore options before they leap in and do it, or to give them different insights as to why one option is better than the other. And it's just basically helping them to develop themselves, because that to me enables me as a mentor to understand my own skills and weaknesses. And you always learn something new when you do a mentoring session, but it also means that you're giving other people, whether they're juniors or peers, the opportunity to explore what they could or couldn't do in a very safe environment. So for me, mentoring is all about helping to develop and support people to take steps that perhaps they wouldn't naturally think of doing, or to just give them a different perspective.
That's beautiful. That's very nicely put there, LJ. I mean, like, before you become a mentor yourself, did you take mentoring part of your career? Why did you become a mentor? Was there because you got you got so much out of being mentored by someone else or a group of people, you chose to give back? And what was the reason behind becoming a mentor?
So I've been very fortunate that I've worked with a lot of forward-thinking companies that see mentoring, particularly for, and this isn't about different genders, but particularly for women. When I started out in IT, mentors were really valuable because, there weren't as many of us then as there are now. I've been around a few years. So, the number of women engaging in the IT sector, in fact, in any of the technologies I've worked in, has increased over the years. So early doors, it was nice to have someone you can go and talk to, because actually there were different expectations set upon you if you're a female in that industry than you were if you're a chap. So for me, the guys said the very forward-thinking organisations wanted to make sure that they were harnessing the talent they'd recruited. Now, you've got a load of people that are afraid to talk, if you've got a section of your company that's afraid to talk or ask questions or put points across because they don't necessarily have the confidence to do that, you've got a resource that's not being fully utilized. So I've worked for, if I give one example, I worked for Energys when they were an IT company that span out of the national grid. They used to run an informal mentoring network for women coming up through the business. I worked for the East Midlands Development Agency, and they had a really strong mentoring program that was probably my first experience of executive mentoring, because you were aligned to a mentor that was in a far more senior position. And that gave me an insight into how you are expected to carry yourself and the value you can bring, and actually being brave enough to be, to stick by your convictions was actually seen as a real strength by a lot of the women that I was mentored by in that organization. And that helped me to develop my own leadership style around, actually, if you think what you're doing is right, as long as you're respectful about it, then actually being strong enough to keep talking about that and hold that position is a good thing to do. So I would like to say I've been on the receiving end of really good mentoring. I've actually already also been on the receiving end, so pretty poor, but that's just helped me understand the things that I like to see and like to do, and the things that perhaps I don't like to see and do as much. And that was quite useful. I also had the opportunity while at ENDA, East Midlands Development Agency, to set up mentoring programs. I worked with a couple of funded activity in the East Midlands to set up mentoring for both women in business and broader mentoring programs, some of them with Nottingham Business Ventures, actually. And they were so valuable, and the feedback you get from these people being able to explore the issues they're facing in a safe but supportive environment is just fantastic. And when you've had that, you whether it's a formal mentoring process that's documented and there are timelines and goals and outcomes, or an informal where you become a sounding board for people who are looking to progress and develop, both of those things, you have an opportunity to add that bit of value. And you, by seeing myself and seeing how much it benefited me and being able to support that broader piece, it's just been something that I've always wanted to share. Now, luckily, I've had people who want to share it with me, because it'd be no worse than being that sort of person who wants to say, "Oh, let me come and help you." And people don't want it, then that's very awkward. But no, it's been something I've really valued and I've really benefited from, and it's been something that I've wanted to share with others, so that hopefully they can get some of that same benefit going forward.
Totally, well said there, LJ. LJ, before somebody decide to become a mentor, what do they have to tell themselves, the do's and don'ts of?
Well, I'm quite fortunate. I've had a bit of training over the years from various organisations on mentoring. The key thing for me, if I was going to talk to anybody about starting out to be a mentor, and I absolutely would recommend that everyone have a go at it in some way, shape or form, is that you're not there to solve somebody else's problem. You're not there to tell people what to do. That's not what mentoring about. Mentoring is about supporting somebody with your own life experiences to explore options and how you present something and how you might want to tackle a problem. You're not fixing it for them. That's not mentoring. You are giving them an opportunity in a safe space to talk through their options of how they could do something, or why they might want to do something, or do you think this is a good approach? Well, let's understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And you, by presenting that safe space and by using your own experience, you are hopefully allowing the individuals to benefit without having to go and make the mistake on their own. Because as people do, you make a mistake, and it can, in some cases, it spurs somebody on to try something different, but in lots of cases, it makes people not want to do anything at all. And actually, that's a loss to a business or an individual. So having that little safe space to talk through what you might want to do and how you could approach it and what other ways we can think of, it just gives people a much better chance of being successful without having the pain and the drop-off period of perhaps not doing quite what they wanted and making a mistake and then being frightened to come forward again.
Totally, LJ. As we discussed just before we went live, I mean, like, most of these mentoring lessons could very well be life lessons compared to how to solve a client's problem, or run a proposal, or procuring an IT kit or something like that, I'm sure. How do we then, as much as we mentor others, we also learn during this process, right? I mean, like many times. So talk us through how the learning process is both ways.
Okay, so it's a bit of a funny one, because I to prepare for today, I dropped a note out to a number of people I've worked with over the years. And I said, I'm coming onto this podcast. It's fantastic. It's going to be really useful. And I'm sure you've all got examples of where we've worked together. And I've got things that are going to be really critical, that are going to create massive amounts of insights of bid professionals all over the world. And there was oh yeah, that's great. And I've had quite a few responses back, some in my group chat, some individually. And actually, none of them are around my bid experience at all, which I find a little bit like, oh, okay. And I think that's because I'm lucky enough to have worked with a lot of people who've had formal training. Most of them have been APMP certified. They've been on courses. They've been trained and supported to be very good at what they do. And so actually the lessons I've taught them, that they retained. I mean, obviously we've done the ones of how you answer a question, how you get your best out of your subject matter expert, and all these sort of things. You've done all those things. But the things that they've taken away from the time we've spent together and the mentoring that we've had as a group, or as individuals, is it's the life lessons. So it's one of them said I have a number of trite little phrases that I've used, and one of them is, that's not my problem. And the colleague I worked with said that to me was a seminal moment. It absolutely opened my eyes to realize that as a bid manager, in fact, as a human being, I do not have to take on everybody's problems. But I was so keen to help and be supportive that I've been massively swamping myself with all this stuff. She said, but hearing you say, I hear what you're saying, but that is not my problem, made me realize that actually I would be more effective delivering what I need to. Her words were, it's been really empowering, both on a personal level as well as an outward impression to the business, to put your foot down sometimes and show that you can't be pushed over. We love to help others and we do anything we can, but sometimes we just need to say no. And the learning that she's taken for that has obviously gone through with her, and she's moved on. She's got a fantastically successful career. And for me, it's realizing that something that to me is so simple, because I can't fix every problem in the world as much as I'd love to. Actually, that's not something that people are naturally brought up to understand. We are brought up to be supportive and to be pleasers and to be helpful and to do all these things for people. But actually, by giving people the opportunity to say no and respecting that was a great life lesson for her. And that's actually something I've taken away. That every time I work with a new person, especially if they come in and they're in a junior role, is empowering them to say no when they need to, and supporting them when they say that. And should there be any pushback on the business, one of my things is that I always tell my team, I'll either stand next to you if you're being pushed back on, or I'll stand in front of you so you don't take it yourself. And that to me is something that feeds into that whole giving them the right and the support and the space to just go, I can't do that. No, I'm not.
Totally. What's unique about you, LJS? It's not just the profession that you belong, like it could be bid management, bid professional, but you've also been a mentor to, say, the Military Spouse Network. You also were, a mentor to the STEM. So you have seen like diverse type of people. Do you find sometimes it could be related to business skills, sometimes it could be personal, sometimes it could be career. So was there any commonality in all these things, and what are the unique thing that came out in these individual networks where you mentor as well?
So I think the commonality is that everybody is trying to find the best way through something, and recognizing that nobody ever comes to a mentoring session to be difficult or to be awkward or to have to create conflict or anything. That is, you always need to recognize, even if you don't necessarily agree with what it is they want to say or what they want to do, or even what their outcome is, that's actually not your place to comment. They've always come with the best intention, and you have to support the intention. And I think you get that whatever industry. And I've provided, like I say, I've worked in a number of different industries over the years, and that is absolutely common. So regardless of the individual and whether or not you like them or don't like them, when they come to you for that mentoring and that support, their ultimate intention is the right one, and that you're there to guide them and give them options and not tell them what to do. And I think that is absolutely common across the piece. What I've found that's a bit more specific to the various industries is that when you work in a male-dominated industry, there tends to be a bit more, there is a bit more of a gender imbalance, that occasionally you need to work with the confidence side of things far more than the operational delivery. So it's not about, I need to do this, but I don't know how to do it because I've never done it before, or I'm worried about making a bit of an idiot myself. It's a lot more about, am I able to do that? Am I strong enough to do that? Will people laugh at me? Am I going to be supported? If I say no, is that going to go down well, or am I going to lose position or respect, or, you know, is it going to cause me a problem in the future? Where do I stand with that? And it's actually just giving people that a little. So when it tends to be more of a male dominated industry, what I'm finding is you're giving confidence as well as the mentoring side of it. So you're not just helping them with the issue they're presenting with, but you're also reminding them they've got every right to have that perspective rather. They've got every right to be worried about these things. You've got every right to either say yes or to say no, and whatever. And again, one of the bits of feedback was that, again, male-dominated industry worked in, it was that when this individual did get called out for something, she said that the feedback was that with the right support, you can get through anything. And that's what I try and deliver when I'm working against in that kind of slightly more nuanced environment than just the general, I just need a hand, what can you help me with? It tends to be that when you're in there's a bit more challenging socioeconomic reasons around why somebody needs help. You just need to make sure that they understand that they've got that support and you can help them with it.
Totally. That was amazing. Thank you, LJ. You have mentored so many people, LJ, and then during that process, you might have heard so many lessons or so many situations. Beyond this, there is confidentiality, people's thing. Any kind of themes pop up frequently during this?
What kind of things do you mean? What you mean as in from a technology perspective or an individual, or
like, for example, was there any general themes where people were asking for mentor support? So, for example, I'm in a career change. I'm having this problem with my line manager. I'm having this. Did you find out of this 50 or 100 or 1,000 mentees that you have, you find like, okay, these are the top 5, top 10, or top 3 kind of themes that people tend to ask for support more. And maybe this is my advice. If that's like frequently asked mentoring support, what are those?
Yeah, my frequently asked questions for being a mentor. I think there are the themes I would have to absolutely say I've seen many times are about self-confidence. Can I do it? How do I handle this particularly sticky situation with someone who is senior to me? And I've got something that's quite controversial I want to say, how do I do it? They would probably be the 3 things I see the most of. The am I good enough? First one is always a challenge. And again, predominantly I've found with younger women and some of the graduates that came to us, and they're the ones that are actually, they tend to be a far more subtle response because you're actually building somebody's self-confidence and self-worth up. And that's not a 5-minute job, but that can be possibly one of the most rewarding elements of mentoring, is when you work with somebody and you can see their potential, but they don't see it. But working with them and giving them the confidence to make those decisions, take those steps, try those new things, do something that perhaps they haven't done before, whether that's saying yes or saying no. That is a theme that actually, even when this is hard, whether because I don't have time or actually the things with the challenges we're facing are quite tricky, that's the bit that kind of keeps me sticking with it. whether that's with military spouses, with people I work with personal, whatever it might be. That's the bit that sticks with it, because the benefit and the pleasure I get in seeing somebody realize that actually they are capable of so much more. That's an amazing feeling. I've got something difficult to say to somebody senior, a manager, whatever it might be, and I've got to have a difficult conversation. That's more about helping people understand that being honest does not always mean you have to be blunt, and actually having a sensible conversation and making sure that you don't burn your bridges. Those are things that you learn as you mature, don't they? That, you know, how to have a difficult conversation is never an easy thing to do, but actually if you do it well, then it can open more doors, and it means that you don't have doors shut behind you. And that's a theme I've seen throughout, and that can be everything from I need to have my notice in and it's going to be really difficult, what do I do, through to I want to ask for a pay rise, or my boss has put me in a position with a project that's never going to go anywhere, how do I get out of it? You know, I've had a couple of those over, in fact I've had several of those over the years, and they can be quite difficult for individuals to understand how to pick their way through, because your natural reaction is either to, you know, to avoid the conversation or just walk away, and that's never a great way to deal with these things and move on. And then the third one is rather where somebody wants to pitch an idea, a concept, an approach, or something that's not going to be popular. How do they do that? How do you communicate an idea that is, to them, is absolutely fantastic, but to everyone else might not be? And I think, having done as many governance calls and governance sessions that I've done over the years within the bid management function, being able to present information that can be a little bit, I'm not going to say conflicting, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial. You know, a controversial decision for a bid or no bid, or a controversial decision of how we're going to present an opportunity. Actually mentoring mainly your salespeople to put that position down, either in writing or verbally, or when you're supporting someone who's going to do a client presentation, that can be really rewarding, again, because you're giving them an opportunity to, you know, again, it's a safe space to say, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Have you thought about doing something so totally not standard that actually might make a real difference? And sometimes, you know, they can be really quite good fun, because you're allowing them to say things that perhaps they wouldn't normally say. You know, let's not use a PowerPoint. Let's use a clipboard. Let's not talk about what the opportunity is. Let's talk about what the opportunity isn't. You know, let's try something completely different, whatever it might be. So those tend to be my three themes that I've seen over the years. And if I was going to give anybody advice on how to get into mentoring, personally, I would be, how would you respond if someone needed to talk to you about those three areas? And what would you want someone to say to you if you went to them with those problems under those three headings? And when you can think your way through that, then actually you're probably in a really good place to start exploring being a mentor. Or even maybe if you get to that point, you look and think, I don't know how I would deal with having a difficult conversation. Actually, maybe that's a flag that having a mentor probably wouldn't be a bad thing, even if it's just as a short-term engagement.
Wow, that's very, and I can relate to, while you were talking, I was nodding my head pretty interesting, because most of my interventions all came, as you rightly said, 80% or more came from predominantly these three situations, which is common, because we always have issues or problems that's been thrown at us, or sometimes without knowing we get into stuff, into these things. It's important to have someone who listens to us and help us to come out with the clarity. That's amazing. So while you were starting to mentor over to now, you have mentored so many, how did you improve your mentoring skills? Is there any models or styles or any reading material, or how did you improve yourself there, LJ?
So I worked for a while with the Mentoring and Befriending Foundation. They're far more about mentoring and befriending on a personal level, but actually the skills that they deliver and the skills that they offer, they can be applied to anything, whether it's a business or a personal kind of engagement. And that was very much, again, that's about active listening skills. It's about understanding, and it's about comfortable challenge, and it's about having difficult conversations. I'm very fortunate that, again, over the years I've been in work, I've had a number of exceptional training courses that I've worked on that all build up to make me who I am and my style the way it is. That can be, it's called Miller Shepherd, I did a great course on negotiation with I think it was Miller Shepherd Miller. Can't remember what the training company's called. And that's something I've kept with the way I deliver a mentoring session pretty much throughout. I had some one-to-one coaching a couple of years ago, and I worked in rail. We had the opportunity to get some one-to-one coaching, and part of that for me was about how I can support my team and how I can help other people when they come to me with mentoring queries or with mentoring challenges. And we did quite a bit of it was quite challenging, and sometimes I'd come away thinking that I'd gone 5 rounds with Mike Tyson, because you were just absolutely shattered, because the mental challenge of saying, well, actually, no, I think this, but why do you think that? And that devil's advocate role that my coach played, I feel really helped round some of my approaches, because I can be a little bit, so I'm by no means ideal at this all the time, but sometimes you can be a little bit blinkered to what the other person is trying to achieve. And actually having those very challenging sessions with that coach helped me realize that sometimes you do need to take a step back, and you need to remove your personal perspective or your personal view and just listen to what they're trying to achieve. Because actually you bring too much of yourself, then you're fixing the problem, and that's not what mentoring is about. I'm not here to fix your problem. I'm here to help you explore what the right answer is for you. And that was brilliant. So I've been very fortunate, because it's been a real blend. I probably should be better at reading up on a lot of business magazines. I noticed that Tim from Opportunity had put a note on of all the business books he's reading at the minute. And I thought, I really don't do a lot. I listen to audiobooks in the car, and I had the one about Turn the Boat Around, and I listened to a bit of it, and I thought, this is not working for me. So I probably need to be better at that. So that's my own learning from today, Bhaskar, is to make sure that I go away and I start I do more self-improvement on that, in that side of things. But no, like I said, a lot of it is working with good people. When you work with good people and you follow good people on LinkedIn and you look at the way that they present things. I listened to your the webinar the other day with what was the chap's name? Vashnu? Yeah. And I listened to how he presented, the challenges in career development and what do you want and where you go. And I absorb all of that, and you listen to how these things are put back, and you think, actually, that was a really good way of saying that, or I really liked how that came across, or that's a fantastic question to ask. And so you learn from all places, and that comes into the mix of who you are and how you support others.
That's very powerful, Elja. I mean, like as you rightly said, one person to the next person teaches you how to do. At the same time, you go and build up your own learnings. And when you ask for help from others, that also teaches you something. I think it's a nice blend of all three. And we always say we are a continuous lifelong learner. So thank you for sharing that. And personality, as you rightly said, would always kick in. If I were you, I will do it this way. It's a normal way of saying, and I can't. And I do coach and mentor a lot of people, but I some way or the other, I try to bite my tongue, say, don't say that word. If I were you, so not to say, but that's great. Thank you for sharing again. You might have you might have had a lot of role models within your company, and you might also have role models around like Nottingham, like the military environment, like the STEM, like the CRN network. Do you have any people that you would like to share?
So I love reading what Pippa Birch writes from Pipsa Solutions. I find her approach to bid management and the way she's grown her business, and I try and always go, if she's doing a presentation or a session, I try and get to be part of that, because I find I don't always necessarily do the same thing she does, but then that would be a bit weird. But I love the way that she approaches the problems that she has, and so I learn from her. There is a lady at Sky called Natalie. I can't remember her surname, definitely a sign of my age. But she leads technology. Well, she leads one of the technology arms in Sky, and she is amazing at how she presents technology and the approach for STEM. and how STEM can be a real differentiator for kind of women in business and for the next generation. And I find what she writes really quite exciting and interesting. There's a copywriter called Jo Watson that, again, her approach is a lot more informal writing, especially on LinkedIn, than mine is. But again, she's putting across some quite complex and quite challenging points sometimes, and the way she does it is very engaging. And so I learn from how she creates and writes. My mum is amazing. My mum is definitely a one to learn from. My mum was a nurse for pretty much all of her career. And she has an ability to talk to anybody about anything. So things that I would shy away from because it's uncomfortable or it's a bit difficult or whatever it might be, you kind of think, don't really want to have that conversation. My mum never had a choice. She had to have those conversations, whether it be about life or death or futures or illnesses or anything. And I think her ability to put people at ease and get information from them so that she can formulate into a response to turn that back in a way that helps them. I mean, that's a fantastic model of learning and communication that she probably doesn't even realize. But as an observer that's been taught and had courses and formal teaching on how to deal with this stuff, and I just see her doing it naturally. And I just think that's where I'd like to get to one day. I'd like to be able to it be so second nature to be able to absorb complex information and turn it into a really useful response. That would be fantastic. But there are lots. I mean, yourself, I love reading the podcasts, the emails that we send and the newsletters and those sort of things. It all helps build a person up to understand a little bit more about the world they live in. And that makes me a more useful person to help others. So there are lots of people that influence you in almost unseen ways. By osmosis, you're taking this information in and you're learning from it. And again, when you're working with a diverse group of mentors, which pretty much my range is fairly diverse at the moment, everything from women looking to go back into the workplace to people who run their own businesses. I'm working with a young woman who's just about to become a mother and how she's going to navigate the career path after, both during and after that process. There's quite a few of the military spouses on an informal basis that I drop in and help with bits and pieces. You can't be one thing for all people, so you have to be that flexible blend. And by learning from lots of different people who come from lots of different backgrounds, hopefully that flexibility is something that I can then share, that I learn and I share.
That's very powerful, Angie. I think you could have done so many things with your time. You could have slept. You could have gone for travel. I'm sorry. That's what I would do. You could have slept, you could have traveled, you could have spent time with family, you could have spent time with your husband back in NATO. But why did you choose to give so much time on mentoring?
Because if you don't, who will? It's one of those that, I wouldn't be where I am now if somebody hadn't taken a couple of hours to sit and talk to me once a month about what I wanted to do in my life. And I wouldn't be where I am now if my friends hadn't supported me through some difficult decisions, or the people I work with hadn't enabled me to express ideas. And I think it's a little bit of giving back. I don't have a lot of time to do major charity works. I'm not somebody who's going to train to do a marathon because that really isn't my kind of thing, but I just don't have the mental space and the physical space to do that sort of stuff. But picking up the phone or going on a Zoom call or having a chat with somebody for a couple of hours or even half an hour, it's a very small investment in my mind that can make a massive difference to them. And I'll give you a little story. I might have even used it on the last one, so apologies if I'm repeating myself. But when I was the business development lead for women in business in the East Midlands, I was sat in a car park in Bakewell one day. I was going for a meeting. I got in the car park and this lady rang me. And there was a networking event on and she didn't know whether she should go or not. She was I don't know if I should go. I'm a bit uncertain. I'm lacking confidence to go to this session. And I was running late for my meeting because my time management's never been fantastic. But I was running late for my meeting and I said, look, tell me why you don't want to go. Well, tell me what the problem is. Look, let's talk why that is. And we had 10, 15 minutes and we talked it through. And I said to her, look, if you want to go, there's a space for you. If you don't want to go, that's absolutely fine. Maybe go to the next one. And we ended the conversation with here are your choices. They have got to be what works for you, because if they're not going to work for you, you're not going to do it and it's going to not work and it's going to be horrific and that's going to set you back. So here are your choices. So do what's right for you. And to be honest, I went to my meeting, didn't think anything of it. About a year and a half later, we were running the Women in Business conference at Pride Park in Derby. And we'd got this big, no, in fact, it wasn't. It was at the East Midlands Conference Centre in Nottingham. So we were at this conference, and we'd run this Women in Business event, and we had a couple of fantastic keynote speakers, and we had loads of people coming there. And this lady flies up to me and says, "You're LJ." And I was a Franklin at the time. "You're LJ Franklin, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am, yeah." She said, "You spent half an hour talking to me in the car one day." I went, "Yes." And I remembered then, it kind of came back to me. It was when I was sat in Bakewell. And she threw her arms around my neck and said, "You changed my life." And you sort of think, "I did what?" And she said, "You changed my life. I went to the mentoring session and the networking session. I've done this. I've started my business. I'm doing this now." And that half an hour that to me was just a bit of a chat on the phone had completely changed this woman's life. And, I'm really bad because I can't actually remember the lady's name. It's terrible, really. But, you think half an hour, what's that to me? In the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. And when you provide mentoring support, what you think might be just a chat or a conversation or a little bit of advice and guidance or a bit of signposting, the longer term intrinsic value of that can't be measured until you look back. It's one of these things that you don't see the value until you kind of do a retrospective. But that's changed somebody's life. And for all you know, Pascal, there could be people around the world that you've just given them, you gave them half an hour and they're in a totally different place. And so that's why I'm a big advocate, and that's why I support mentoring, and that's why I give my time as freely as I can to whoever needs it, because to me it's half an hour of a life lesson, but to somebody else it could be the difference between success and failure and happiness and progression. And that all sounds very, very dramatic, but you don't realize the impact you have on people. And I think if I can just help, if I've helped that one lady, and there are other people I've helped in little ways, that somebody once said to me, "I want to be like you when I grow up." I mean, bless her, she was older than me at the time, so I don't know if that means I've not grown up yet, or she thinks she's got more to go. But she says, the impact you've had on my life means that you are my role model, and when I grow up, I want to be like you. And again, half an hour, but the impact and the value that brings is, to me, far greater than raising loads of money for doing a run or planting trees or whatever else it might be. To me, this is how I give back to my community in whatever way, shape or form, because it can just make such a massive difference.
Totally, LJ. I mean, that's so beautiful. I always say to people, share your moments with them, and I'm glad. I mean, and I'm the listeners who are listening to it, if they have taken some pointers out of it, that's the last note that LJ mentioned. That 30 minutes of your time could change, in some cases, life or death, to certain people, especially now people are lonely. And some people, please do ask for help. The worst the other person can say is no. And if you come to LJ or to me, we are never going to say no anyway. So we are there.
It might be, I've only got 20 minutes, but you're welcome to have it.
That's so beautiful. So that's what we listened today. The talk was around lessons learned and lessons shared. And LJ, who is the current nominee for the Women in the Year CRN Award, highly commended Exec Mentor CRN Award 2020, being awarded Mentor of the Year in 2021, East Midlands Mentor of the Year in 2021. And I think, it's a blessing to have you here. LJ, thank you for sharing, and I'm sure it inspired you to become a mentor, few to ask for help, and most importantly, few to get to know LJ in a much more deeper level. Thank you so much, LJ. Stay healthy, stay happy, continue to inspire everybody around you, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Oh, you're a star. Thank you very much, Bhaskar. And anytime, and anybody who's listening, if I can help at all, just let me know. Always happy to help.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.